The first time my upstairs neighbor called the cops on me, I was standing in my kitchen at 9:47 p.m., barefoot, stirring pasta and humming under my breath. No music blasting. No party. No friends over. Just me, a pot of boiling water, and a shitty Tuesday. The knock came hard and sharp, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood there, polite but bored, asking if I'd been experiencing excessive noise complaints. That was my introduction to Theo. I didn't know his name yet, of course. To me, he was just the guy upstairs. The one who apparently had the hearing of a bat and the patience of a ticking bomb. Over the next few months, he complained about everything. My footsteps, my shower, my chair scraping the floor. Once, I swear to God, he complained because I closed my fridge too loudly. Management forwarded the emails like clockwork.noise complaint from Unit 4B. Please be mindful of shared living spaces. I tried. I really did. I bought rugs. I stopped wearing shoes inside. I even learned how to lower cabinets with my hands like I was defusing a bomb. Nothing helped. I built this image of Theo in my head. Middle-aged, bitter, probably yelling at kids to get off his lawn. The kind of guy who enjoyed ruining other people's evenings because he had nothing better to do. Then one night, everything shifted. It was late, close to midnight. I'd just gotten home from work, exhausted, socially drained. The kind of tired that settles into your bones. As I stepped into my apartment, I realized my ceiling light was flickering, like it was about to give up on life entirely. 2 blinks, then darkness. Perfect, I muttered. I grabbed my phone to email maintenance, but before I could, I heard a thud from upstairs, then another. And then, silence. A minute later, there was a knock at my door. I almost didn't answer. Part of me assumed it was another complaint, delivered in person this time. I took a breath, opened the door, already braced to be annoyed. And then I saw him. Theo wasn't what I expected. Not even close. He was tall, first of all. Broad shoulders, dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it one too many times. He wore a worn gray hoodie and jeans, and he looked awkward. Like he wasn't entirely sure he should be there. "Hey," he said. His voice was lower than I imagined. Calm. Not angry. For a second, neither of us spoke. My brain scrambled to recalibrate. He continued, rubbing the back of his neck. "Your lights just went out, right?" I blinked. "Yeah." "I think the breaker tripped upstairs. Old wiring. Happens sometimes." He hesitated. "I might have caused it. I was fixing something." This was not how I thought this would go. "Oh," I said stupidly. "Okay." Another pause. His eyes flicked past me, into my dark apartment. "Do you want to come up? I can reset it." I should have said yes immediately. Instead, I stood there, staring at the guy who'd made my life hell for months, suddenly offering help like a normal human being. "Sure," I said finally. We walked up the stairs together in silence. Up close, I noticed things I hadn't before. He smelled faintly, like soap and something woodsy. His shoulders were tense, like he was always braced for confrontation. When we reached his apartment, he unlocked the door and stepped aside to let me in. It was quiet, clean, soft lighting from a single lamp. No TV on, no chaos, just calm. "Breakers in the hall," he said. He fixed it quickly, like he'd done it 100 times. When the lights flickered back on downstairs, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Thanks," I said. "I'm Oliver, by the way." "Theo," he replied. There it was, a name. Suddenly, he wasn't just a complaint anymore. We stood there, the moment stretching. I could feel something unspoken hovering between us. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Look," he said, eyes dropping to the floor. "About the noise complaints. I know I've been a lot. That surprised me even more than his face. I work nights, he continued. Light sleeper. Not an excuse, just context. I nodded slowly. I didn't know. Yeah, he said quietly. I should have said something instead of emailing management like an asshole. I laughed before I could stop myself. He looked up, startled, then relieved. Fair, I said. I thought you hated me. I didn't, he said. Then, after a beat, I don't. The silence that followed felt different now. Not awkward. Charged. That was the night I stopped thinking of Theo as my enemy. I didn't know yet that he was about to become something far more complicated. After that night, things were different. Not dramatically different at first. No sudden confessions, no awkward hallway tension. Just small shifts. Subtle ones. The kind you only notice in hindsight. Theo stopped filing complaints. That alone felt like a miracle. Instead, when I came home late and worried I'd been too loud, I'd find a short text from an unknown number. Hey, all good tonight. Didn't even notice. The first time it happened, I stared at my phone for a full minute before replying. Thanks. I'm trying, I swear. A few seconds passed. I know. I can tell. That shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. We started running into each other more. Or maybe we always had. And now I was actually paying attention. The stairwell. The laundry room. The mailbox. Each time, the conversation stretched a little longer. How was work? Still on nights? Yeah. You? Normal stuff. Easy. Comfortable. One evening, I was lugging groceries up the stairs when I heard footsteps behind me. Before I could turn around, Theo reached past me, steadying a bag that was about to slip. Careful, he said, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. Thanks, I muttered, suddenly very aware of how narrow the stairwell was. He followed me down to my door without comment. As I unlocked it, I hesitated. Hey, I said, you want a beer or something, as a peace offering? I expected him to decline. He didn't. Yeah, he said. I'd like that. That was the first time Theo stepped into my apartment when it wasn't about noise. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, beers between us, some random show playing on low volume. The conversation flowed easier than I expected. He told me about his job at a design firm, how the night shifts were temporary but dragging on longer than promised. I told him about mine, the long hours, the constant feeling of being behind. At some point, the TV went silent. Neither of us noticed, so he said after a while, Can I ask you something? Sure. Were you really humming that night? His mouth twitched like he was holding back a smile. The first time I complained, I groaned. God, yes. It was kind of nice, he admitted. That's what pissed me off. I laughed, surprised. You complained because you liked it? No, he said quickly, then paused. Okay, maybe a little. The look we shared then lingered too long to be accidental. I don't know who leaned in first. I just know that suddenly, the space between us was gone. His knee brushed mine. Then stayed there, my breath caught, waiting for him to pull away. He didn't. Instead, he glanced at my mouth, then back to my eyes, like he was asking without words. I nodded, barely. Theo kissed me slowly, cautiously, like he was testing fragile glass. When I kissed him back, something shifted. His hand found my jaw, warm and steady, and I felt that spark. The one you don't get often, but know instantly when it's there. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing harder than before. Wow, I said softly. Yeah, he agreed. We didn't go any further that night. We didn't need to. He stayed for another beer, then left with a smile that stuck with me long after the door closed. After that, it became our thing. Late night beers, quiet laughter, sitting too close, falling asleep on opposite ends of the couch and waking up tangled together, pretending it was accidental. It wasn't. One night, after he kissed me goodbye at my door, he hesitated. You know, he said, I never actually had a problem with the noise. I raised an eyebrow. Theo, I mean it, he said, sheepish. I just noticed you, and I didn't know how to deal with that. My heart skipped. Notice me how? He smiled, soft and honest. like this. And then he kissed me again, deeper this time, like he wasn't afraid anymore. Turns out, all it took was one meeting to change everything. Once you cross that line, there's no really going back to pretending. Theo didn't move upstairs. We didn't suddenly become a couple overnight. Life didn't flip like a switch. It just tilted, slightly. Enough that everything felt new. Even the things that stayed the same. He started coming over after his night shifts. Always quiet knocks. Always that same soft smile when I opened the door. "You awake?" he'd ask. "For you?" "Yeah." Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. We'd sit on the couch, legs tangled, his head resting against my shoulder while the city hummed outside my windows. The kind of silence that feels earned. One night, I finally asked the question that had been circling my mind. "So why the complaints?" I said, tracing idle patterns on his wrist. He exhaled slowly. "I moved in after a breakup, bad one." I stayed quiet, letting him continue. "You were happy," he said. "Or at least you sounded like it. Laughing, humming, living. And I was upstairs, angry at everything." I swallowed. "So you complained?" "Yeah," he admitted. "Because it was easier than admitting I wanted what you had. That landed heavier than I expected. From then on, we were more honest. About exes. About fear. About the weird ways men sometimes learn to protect themselves by pushing people away first. The first time he slept over, nothing dramatic happened. We lay there, facing each other, knees touching, whispering like teenagers. At some point, his fingers laced with mine. "You know," he murmured. "This is way better than silence." I smiled into the pillow. "Told you I wasn't that loud." He laughed softly, then pressed a kiss to my temple, careful and affectionate. It felt intimate in a way that surprised me, more than any physical escalation could have. But intimacy changes things. Soon, neighbors noticed, not the noise, never the noise, but us. Theo leaving my apartment early mornings, me bringing coffee upstairs. A shared glance in the stairwell that lingered just a beat too long. One evening as we stood at my door, he hesitated again. That had become his tell. "Oliver," he said, serious now, "if this starts to feel like too much." "It doesn't," I said immediately. He studied my face, searching for doubt. When he didn't find it, he relaxed. "Good," he said, "because I don't want to lose this." Neither did I. The irony wasn't lost on me. The guy who once tried to silence my life had become the one person I wanted to hear from the most. And sometimes, late at night, when the building settled and the world went quiet, Theo would smile against my shoulder and whisper. Funny how noise complaints turned into this. I'd just pull him closer and think, yeah, funny how one meeting can change everything. It would have been easy if things had stayed in that soft, late-night bubble. Quiet kisses, shared coffee, inside jokes that only existed between us. But real life has a way of testing what feels fragile. Theo started pulling away first. Not dramatically, not in a way you could call out without sounding paranoid. Just delays, fewer texts, coming over less often. When I asked if everything was okay, he always said yes, and I always pretended to believe him. One night, after almost a week of barely seeing him, I heard footsteps above me, heavy ones, back and forth, something thudding, furniture maybe, then the familiar buzz of my phone. Hey, I might be loud tonight. Sorry in advance. I stared at the screen, heart doing something stupid. You can be as loud as you want, I typed. You know that. The reply didn't come. By midnight, I couldn't take it. I went upstairs and knocked. Theo opened the door slower than usual. He looked tired. Not just physically, emotionally worn down, like he was carrying something he didn't want to set down. Hey, he said. Hey, I echoed. You okay? He stepped aside to let me in, but didn't touch me. That was new. I've been thinking, he said, pacing once, then stopping. About us. There it was. The sentence everyone dreads. Okay, I said carefully. I like you, he continued, more than I expected to, and that scares the hell out of me. I felt my chest tighten, but I stayed quiet. I spent years building walls, he said. Being alone upstairs, complaining about noise instead of admitting I wanted connection. And now I finally have it, and my instinct is to shut it down before it gets taken from me. I took a step closer. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I know, he said softly. That's the problem. Silence stretched between us again, but this time it was heavy. I don't need you to be perfect, I said finally. I just need you to not disappear. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in his expression cracked. I don't want to lose you, he admitted. I just don't know how to do this without messing it up. I reached for his hand, giving him the space to pull away if he wanted. He didn't. Then we learn, I said. Together. Slowly. No complaints. That earned a weak smile. He pulled me into a hug, tight and grounding, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks and finally let it out. That night, we didn't talk much more. We just lay there listening to the building settle around us, to the muffled sounds of other lives stacked above and below. And for the first time, the noise didn't feel like a threat. It felt like proof we weren't alone. The funny thing is, months later, when someone new moved into the apartment below mine and complained about footsteps, Theo laughed harder than I'd ever heard him laugh. Guess it's your turn, he said. I squeezed his hand and smiled. Yeah, I said, but I already know how one complaint can change everything. Things settled after that. Not in a boring way, more like the kind of calm that comes after turbulence, when you're still alert but no longer bracing for impact. Theo didn't disappear again. Instead, he started showing up differently, texting before he spiraled, saying things out loud instead of letting them fester upstairs between the floorboards. Some nights, he'd still hesitate at my door, fingers hovering like he was deciding whether to knock or retreat. Every time I'd open it before he could change his mind. You're getting good at that, he said once. At what? Letting people in, he replied. I realized then how much effort it cost him, how every step forward was a conscious choice. We didn't label things. Not at first. We just existed in this shared rhythm. Me cooking while he leaned against the counter pretending not to steal bites, him falling asleep halfway through movies, my head ending up on his chest more often than not. One night, rain hammered against the windows, loud enough that even old Theo might have complained. He smiled at the sound. Guess we're even now, he said. I laughed. Want me to file a complaint on your behalf? He turned serious for a second. You could have hated me, you know. I almost did. Still gave me a chance. I shrugged. You knocked instead of emailed. That earned a quiet laugh. Then he kissed me. Slow, familiar, sure. A few weeks later, we ran into his ex at a coffee shop. I didn't know who he was at first. Just some guy who froze mid-sentence when he saw Theo. The tension was immediate. I waited, unsure where I fit. Theo didn't hesitate. He reached for my hand like it was instinct. This is Oliver, he said. My boyfriend. Boyfriend? The word landed softly but firmly. The guy nodded, said something polite, then left. When the door closed behind him, Theo exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. You okay? I asked. Yeah, he said. Better than okay. Later that night, lying in bed, he traced circles on my arm and said, You know what's funny? What? I spent so long trying to control noise because I was scared of being heard. I turned to face him. And now? Now, he said, pressing his forehead to mine, I don't mind if the whole building hears us. I laughed, but my chest felt tight in the best way. The complaints never came back. Not from him, not from us. Just life, happening, imperfect and loud and shared. And every now and then, when I catch him listening to the sounds of the building, footsteps, voices, the low hum of other people living, I see him smile, like he finally understands. Noise means someone's there. By the time winter rolled in, the building felt different. Not quieter, just warmer. Theo started leaving his windows cracked at night, even when it was cold. He said he liked hearing the city breathe, sirens in the distance, someone laughing 3 floors down, the old pipes knocking like they were clearing their throats. You're the reason, I told him once. He smiled without opening his eyes. I know. We hosted our first almost date by accident. A couple of my coworkers stopped by after drinks. and Theo was already at my place, barefoot, folding laundry like he lived there. No one questioned it. He handed out beers, listened more than he talked, laughed at the right moments. When they left, I leaned against the counter and said, "You were very domestic just now." He smirked. "Don't get used to it." But I did. Somewhere between borrowed hoodies and shared grocery lists, Theo stopped going back upstairs every night. His toothbrush appeared next to mine. His charger lived permanently by my bed. One morning, I realized I hadn't heard footsteps above me in days. "You still have an apartment up there, right?" I asked. He shrugged. "Technically, the first real fight came out of nowhere. I'd had a rough day, one of those where everything piles up and logic goes out the window. Theo was late. Again. When he finally showed up, quiet and apologetic, I snapped. "You can't just disappear when things get hard," I said. "Not again." His jaw tightened. "I wasn't disappearing. I was working. I didn't know that." "You didn't ask." Silence slammed into the room. For a moment, I worried we'd break right there, over nothing and everything at once. Then Theo sat down heavily on the couch and rubbed his face. "You're right," he said. "I default to quiet. You default to filling it. We're going to screw this up if we don't talk." I sat beside him, our shoulders touching. "I don't need constant noise," I said. "I just need to know you're still here." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll tell you, even when it feels stupid." That became our rule. No vanishing acts, no silent resentment. If something felt loud inside, we said it out loud. Months later, management sent out an email asking for feedback about noise issues in the building. Theo forwarded it to me with one line. Should I apologize to the entire complex? I laughed so hard I had to sit down. That night, as we lay in bed, snow falling softly outside, I thought about how strange it was, how close I'd come to hating him, how easily we could have stayed strangers separated by a ceiling and a list of complaints. Instead, he was there beside me, breathing steady, one hand resting over my heart like he was making sure it stayed. Funny how the person who once wanted silence became the one who taught me how to listen. Spring made everything louder. Windows opened. Music drifted between buildings. Someone somewhere was always moving furniture, laughing too hard, living too openly. Months ago, that would have driven Theo insane. Now, he barely noticed unless I pointed it out. "You hear that?" I asked one afternoon, lying on the couch with my legs across his lap. "Someone's practicing trumpet. Badly." He listened for a second, then shrugged. "At least they're trying." I smiled. That answer still felt like a small miracle. The real test came when his lease renewal notice arrived. He stared at the email longer than necessary, jaw tight, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't say anything at first, just waited. "I don't think I want to renew," he said eventually. My heart skipped. "Okay." "I mean," he rushed, glancing at me. "Not like that. I'm barely there. And you—" He stopped, uncertain. "I don't want to assume." I sat up, facing him. "Theo, ask." He exhaled, then met my eyes. "Do you want me to move in?" There it was. The question that turned something into something else, entirely. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, because I wanted to say it right. "Yes," I said finally, "but only if you're not doing it out of fear or convenience." "I'm not," he said without hesitation. "I'm doing it because when I'm upstairs, it feels like I'm missing something." My throat tightened. Okay. We told ourselves we'd take it slow. We didn't. By the end of the month, his apartment was mostly empty. We carried boxes down the stairs together, laughing at the absurdity of it all. The last thing to go was a rolled-up rug, the same one he'd bought years ago to muffle sound. "You keeping that?" I asked. He looked at it, then shook his head. "Nah. Don't need it anymore." The building didn't change when he officially moved in. No announcements. No fireworks. Just 2 toothbrushes, 1 set of keys, and the quiet confidence of knowing where he'd be at night. One evening, lying in bed with the windows open, I asked, "Do you ever regret it?" "The complaints?" he asked. Everything before us. He thought for a moment. No. If I hadn't been that guy, I wouldn't have knocked on your door. And if I hadn't knocked, I wouldn't be here. Outside, someone laughed. A door slammed. A life carried on. Theo pulled me closer and whispered, I like this noise. So did I. Sometimes I think about that first night. The cops. The humming. The ceiling between us. Funny how thin it really was.